The plains of South Luangwa shimmered beneath the afternoon sun, their golden grasses trembling under a heat that pressed down like invisible hands. Cicadas shrilled from acacia branches, and somewhere in the tall savanna, a zebra mare named Mara led her days-old foal through the whispering brush. The air was thick with the scent of dust, wild sage, and something else, fear. Mara's stripes quivered as she walked, her black and white pattern stark against the burnished land. Every sense in her body was alive. She could hear the distant lowing of buffalo, the laughter of baboons on the cliffs, and the murmur of the Luangwa River beyond the baobabs. But her ears twitched to another sound, something that didn't belong to the usual symphony of the wild. Her foal, a fragile colt with legs still uncertain beneath him, stumbled to keep up. He nuzzled her side, seeking reassurance, and she gave a soft huff, her breath hot and trembling. She'd been on edge since dawn. There had been too many signs, the silence of birds, the absence of antelope, the faint drag marks in the sand that smelled faintly of death. Mara was not wrong. Just a few meters away, beneath a tangle of low shrubs and termite mounds, the predator waited. The python was massive, thick as a man's torso, its mottled scales blending perfectly with the sun-baked soil. It had lain coiled for hours, eyes half-lidded, tongue tasting the air for the musk of warm blood. It had eaten well weeks ago, but hunger in such creatures was never gone, only sleeping. And now it stirred again. As the zebra mother and foal neared the shaded hollow, the python's body tensed, muscles coiling like compressed springs. The foal, unaware, lowered his head to graze. A fly buzzed lazily around his ear. The python struck. It happened faster than sight. A blur of motion, a whip crack of power, and the baby zebra shrieked, hooves thrashing as the snake's coils wrapped around him, pinning him to the earth. Mara screamed, a guttural, primal cry that echoed across the plains. Without hesitation, she lunged at the snake, her hooves slicing through the dust. She struck again and again, her blows thudding against the python's armored body. But the serpent was relentless. Its coils tightened, bones creaked, and the foal's cries weakened to desperate gasps. It might have ended there, another hidden death in the endless rhythm of predator and prey, but fate had different plans. A few kilometers away, a jeep from the Zambian Wildlife Police Patrol was making its afternoon round. Sergeant Daniel Nkomo sat behind the wheel, squinting against the glare. The radio crackled with static. He and his partner, Constable Lillian Banda, were tracking reports of illegal snares near the river. The day had been long and uneventful. Until they heard the scream. It was faint, carried by the wind, but unmistakable. A zebra's distress call, raw and piercing. Daniel stopped the vehicle. "Did you hear that?" he asked. Lillian nodded, already unholstering her binoculars. It came from the west. That wasn't normal alarm behavior. They drove toward the sound, the jeep bouncing over dry ruts. The grass grew higher here, turning into pockets of shadow beneath the thorn trees. And then they saw her. Mara stood over her foal, kicking and striking at something that twisted and shimmered in the dust. Daniel braked hard. Holy, that's a python. The serpent's body was enormous, easily 6 meters long. The zebra mare was bleeding from her flank, but she refused to retreat. The foal's legs flailed weakly, his breath ragged. "Get the pole hook," Daniel barked. Lillian grabbed the long metal rod from the back, a capture pole usually used for snared animals, and they approached cautiously. The python's head turned toward them, eyes gleaming like amber stones. It opened its jaws, hissing. Mara didn't move aside. She shielded her baby with her body, trembling with terror but standing her ground. Daniel spoke softly, as though to a human mother. "Easy, girl, we're here to help." The python lunged suddenly, its head striking out. Lillian jabbed the pole between its coils, forcing it back. She looped the hook around its neck just behind the jaw. "Got it," she shouted. But the snake was impossibly strong. It thrashed, the metal pole bending under the pressure. Dust billowed, blinding them all. The foal cried again, a thin desperate sound that made Daniel's stomach twist. Hold it still," he shouted. He drew his machete, not to kill, but to wedge between the coils constricting the baby. He pried them apart inch by inch, his arms shaking with effort. The smell of blood and sweat filled the air. The snake twisted again, striking at his leg, missing by inches. Mara whinnied and lunged, her hooves smashing down just behind Daniel, hitting the python's tail. Together, man and animal, they fought. Minutes dragged on like hours. The foal's chest barely moved now. Daniel's vision swam from heat and exhaustion. But Lillian, teeth clenched, shouted, "One more pull." They heaved, wrenching the snake's coils loose. The foal gasped, his sides fluttering. Mara pushed forward, nuzzling him, trying to lift him with her muzzle. Daniel stumbled back, panting, as the python writhed, trying to rewrap itself. He swung the machete's flat side, knocking it away. The serpent recoiled, sensing the fight was lost, and slithered toward the underbrush, its massive body vanishing into the grass. For a long moment, the only sound was the harsh panting of the mare and the faint wheeze of the foal. Lillian dropped to her knees, pressing her stethoscope against the young zebra's chest. "He's breathing," she said, voice trembling. "Barely, but he's breathing." Mara lowered her head, nuzzling her baby's neck, a sound escaping her that was almost human in its relief. Daniel radioed for backup. "We have a juvenile zebra, severe constriction trauma, possible rib damage. We need a mobile vet unit immediately." The call crackled with static, but the answer came. "Copy that. ETA 10 minutes. They began the careful work of stabilizing the foal. Lillian fetched a saline drip from their kit and rigged it against the jeep. Daniel shaded the baby's head with his hat. Mara refused to move more than a few steps away. Every time someone approached too quickly, she would stamp her hooves and snort, eyes wide with terror. But when Lillian whispered softly, "We're helping him," and placed her hand on Mara's shoulder, the zebra stood still. Her body trembled beneath her stripes, but she didn't pull away. 10 minutes later, the veterinary team arrived, a truck carrying Drive. Singh, an Indian-born wildlife vet who had spent 15 years in Africa, and 2 rangers with stretchers. Singh knelt beside the foal, quickly assessing him. "Lucky," he murmured. "If you were 2 minutes later, he'd be gone." They sedated the foal lightly and examined the damage. Several ribs were bruised, but miraculously not broken. Internal bleeding was minimal. Singh cleaned the abrasions, injected antibiotics, and wrapped soft bandages around the chest. All the while, Mara watched, her eyes following every movement. When the foal whimpered, she pressed her muzzle to his face until he quieted. "She's remarkable," Singh said quietly. "Most zebras would flee after a predator attack. But she stayed." Lillian smiled faintly. "She fought a python twice her size." Daniel glanced toward the grass where the snake had disappeared. "And she won." By dusk, the foal was strong enough to be loaded gently into the mobile pen at the back of the veterinary truck. Mara followed close, refusing to be separated. She circled the vehicle, nickering anxiously. Singh hesitated. "We can't transport her. She'll panic on the road." Daniel stepped forward. "Then we stay until they can move him safely." The team made camp near the acacia grove. The sky bled into crimson as the sun sank, and the air cooled. The plains came alive with the night chorus, hyenas laughing in the distance, frogs trilling from the riverbanks. Under the faint light of the moon, the zebra mare stood guard beside the cage where her foal lay resting. Daniel watched from his chair, sipping from a canteen. There was something humbling about the sight, the raw devotion of a wild mother who would defy every instinct to protect her young. Around midnight, Singh approached quietly. "He'll recover," he said. "A few days of rest, and we can release them together." Daniel nodded. "She'll never leave his side." Singh smiled. "Would you?" The night passed slowly, filled with the soft rustle of grass and the rhythmic breathing of the mare. Daniel dozed lightly, waking now and then to check on them. At one point, he saw Mara nudge her foal through the bars of the pen, her breath visible in the moonlight. It was a moment so tender, so primal, that words seemed too small for it. Morning came in a flood of gold. Mist rose from the river. The foal stirred, blinking against the light. When the team opened the pen, Mara rushed forward, pressing her muzzle against him, low knickers rumbling in her chest. The baby stood shakily, leaning into her warmth. Singh nodded to Daniel. "He's strong enough. Time to let them go." They guided the pair toward the open plains, where the grass waved gently under the early sun. The other zebras from Mara's herd grazed in the distance. She paused once, turning back to look at the humans who had saved them. Her ears flicked forward, and for a heartbeat, Daniel thought she understood. Then she trotted away, her foal bounding beside her. The team watched in silence as their striped forms melted into the sea of gold. But the story didn't end there. 2 weeks later, Daniel and Lillian returned to the same region, responding to a report of poachers setting traps near the watering hole. As they patrolled, they noticed movement in the brush. A herd of zebras stood grazing, but one of them broke away, approaching the vehicle with surprising calm. It was Mara. Daniel recognized the scar on her flank, a faint line where the python's teeth had grazed her. And beside her, stronger now, stood her foal. The little one nickered softly, his coat glistening in the sun. Lillian leaned out of the jeep. "You don't think she remembers?" Daniel smiled. "Oh, she remembers." Mara stood for a long moment, her gaze meeting his. Then she turned and cantered back to her herd, her baby following close behind. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the horizon with fire, Daniel wrote in his field log. "Greater than, wildlife rescue isn't always about humans saving animals. Sometimes, it's about witnessing the strength of motherhood, the raw courage that bridges the gap between species. Today, I saw that courage in a zebra named Mara. She fought death itself, and won." He closed the notebook and looked out at the savanna. Somewhere in the distance, a herd of zebras crossed the plain, their stripes rippling like water under the sunset. The python was never found again. But the story spread, first among the rangers, then through the villages, and finally to the world beyond. News outlets picked it up. Zebra mother fights off giant python, saved by wildlife police. The footage from Lillian's body camera, later released, went viral. It showed everything: the chaos, the struggle, the rescue, the moment. The foal breathed again. People cried watching it. Donations poured in for the Luangwa Wildlife Patrol. And somewhere out there, Mara and her baby grazed under an endless sky, unaware of how their story had touched the hearts of millions. Months passed. The rains came and went, the river swelled and shrank. Life on the plains continued its eternal rhythm of birth, danger, and survival. But for Daniel, that day had left a mark that would never fade. Sometimes, on quiet evenings, he would drive back to the same spot where they'd found Mara. The acacia trees still whispered, and the wind still carried the faint scent of dust and wildflowers. And every now and then, when the light was just right, he would see her, far off, among the herd. A flash of stripes, a tilt of the head. The mare who had refused to surrender. He would lift his hand in salute, though she could never know what it meant. And in that moment, the vastness of the wild didn't feel so distant or untamed. It felt shared, a heartbeat between species, bound by the oldest story of all, a mother's love and the will to protect. Somewhere nearby, the foal kicked up his heels and ran, his youthful energy scattering a flock of guinea fowl into the sky. Mara followed, her stride strong and sure. The sun broke through the clouds, washing the plains in gold. For the first time since that day, Daniel laughed out loud, the sound carrying across the grassland. Life, fragile and fierce, had prevailed. And far away, hidden in the shade of the baobab roots, the old python lay coiled and silent, its ancient eyes reflecting the world in shades of hunger and wisdom. Nature's balance remained, cruel, beautiful, eternal. But for one zebra mother and her child, the scales had tipped, if only for a moment, toward mercy. And in the endless, breathing heart of Africa, that moment mattered more than anything else.